Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As asked by you all, these are some questions on pedigree charts, and I hope this helps you. And we can get these questions right in the exam tomorrow. Now let's look at the basic rule of a pedigree chart. The basic rule is that a circle is a female. So this would be the female here. Then the male is shown as a square. So this is the male. And then this is the marriage line, or that they are crossed or they're mated, they're mating. And then of course there's a line that comes out of it. And now this couple has two children, one boy and one girl. So sibling line, line of descent, generation number, this is what you have to understand. So this is a boy, and this is a male, and this is a female. So this is what we have to understand. Female, male, affected with the trait is usually shaded. Deceased means that the person has died. Twins are when they are, this would be not identical, they're fraternal twins. So there's a boy and this is a girl. Then adopted is shown like this, and miscarriage, of course. These are, of course, not that you need to know these two. So this is the basic theory behind the pedigree chart. Question number 37, a very challenging question, very interesting, very challenging question. Two heterozygous plants are crossed. What is the likely ratio of homozygous genotypes to heterozygous genotypes? I know of, students who would get this wrong. So AA, and then we have A small a, and then we have A small a, and then of course we have this. Now what is this? Homozygous. What is this? Homozygous. What is this? Heterozygous. Now this only the very, very keen students who really understand it. So what is the likely ratio of homozygous genotypes to heterozygous genotypes? So the heterozygous are 2, and the homozygous is also this and this. So 1 plus 1, these are 2 are homozygous. So 2 ratio 2, which means 1 ratio 1. Now I know this, but this would be difficult for the child who has not understood the chapter on inheritance. So two heterozygous plants are crossed. What is the likely ratio of homozygous genotypes? This is also homozygous. This is also homozygous. This is homozygous dominant. This is homozygous recessive, but they are homozygous. And the heterozygous ones are these. Hetero means one dominant, one recessive. So this is the only very, very smart students who would be able to pick this up. Then coming on to question number 38, which you, of course, everybody has asked me to do the pedigree questions. And so I'm doing this pedigree chart. Now there's a rule how you do it. The diagram shows a family tree with the blood groups of some individuals labeled. Now they've given you the male and the female, and they've given you all that. Now the first thing which you've got to understand is the ones which we are clear about. We are clear about the genotype of AB, and we are clear about the genotype. So first let's write those. So this is IOIO, and this is IAIB, and this is IAIB. So the ones that you know first, you write those onto the pedigree chart. Now it says the diagram shows a family tree with the blood groups of some individuals labeled. What are the possible blood groups of the numbered individuals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6? Now you've got to understand is the important thing. As this child, O child, so the one O has to come from one parent and one O has to come from the other parent. So this is the mother. So the one IO comes from the mother and IO comes from the father. That is why they have a child who is IO. Remember in maths we do sometimes we know the answer and we can do the question backwards. But then we also know that there is one child who is A and B. So the IA has to come from one of these parents and the IB has to come from one of these parents. Because how would they have an IB child, AB child? So the A has to come from one parent and the B has to come from one parent. So 1 and 2 had to be A and B. Or could be, yes, 2 could be A and it could be B, but that is the possibility. 1 and 2 had to be A and B. So that means we narrow down to here. Now what was 3? 3 was definitely can't be O. Why can't it be O? Because there's an IO coming from here and another O should come from here. Only then 3 can be an O group. But then 3 can't be an O group. So the O groups in you there cannot be 3, 4, 5, 6. Any of these children cannot be O groups. So no O groups. So that means this was wrong. This was wrong. So you had to understand how you had to go back in a pedigree chart. So 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 could have been A, yes. 4 could have been A, yes. Why? Because this A and O. Then 5 was B, yes, B and O. And then 6 could be B as well. So any combinations, what you had to understand is that you had to give me any combinations of IO, because one parent was, the parent O and AB has 4 children. So this is the marriage line and this is the descent line. So this couple whose one parent is O group, this one here, and this one here, which is AB, has 4 children, 3, 4, 5 and 6. 3, 4, 5 are girls, 6 is a boy. So all you have to figure out was IO into IAIB. What were the possibilities? The possibilities were only AO and BO. और तो कुछ हो नहीं सकता. That was the only possibility. So please understand this question and sort of first put in the things which we know, like we know what is O group genotype, we know what is AB. The children who are A, of course, there are two possibilities. Either they can be IAIA or they can be IAIO. So then what do we know? We know the people who are O group and we know the people who are AB. So let's put those genotypes. Let's write those on the pedigree chart. Do that on the question paper. And that is how you will figure out the correct answer. So I hope that helps. In question 39, which product of genetic engineering of plants is linked to farming techniques that reduce biodiversity? So if you use herbicide resistant crops, what are you doing? You're killing actually the weeds, but your crop is saved. So you add herbicide. What is herbicide? Herbicide is a chemical that you use to kill the other plants which might be growing amongst your main cash crop. Like for instance, if you have a wheat crop or a rice crop, but you've got other weeds growing there. Weeds means other little plants growing there, which are no good to us, which we can't sell in the market. So those are called herbs. And we need a chemical to kill them, but we don't want to kill our main cash crop, which is the wheat crop or the sugarcane crop or the rice crop, which we're going to sell and make money. So this is why this was the answer for that. And question 40, which term describes reproduction between those members of a species that are best fitted to their environment? Natural selection. You see, in natural selection, what happens is that there's variation. First of all, there's variation. Then the environment changes. So there's a change in the environment. Like for instance, there's drought. And then some plants are better adapted. They can survive the drought. Drought means there's no rain for many, many years. And those will survive and pass on their advantageous allele to their offsprings. Now another question, 37. A student wrote some statements about chromosomes but made a number of mistakes. There are 46 pairs of chromosomes in a human body cell. In gametes, chromosomes are found in pairs. Males have one X and one Y chromosome in each body cell. Chromosomes contain a long DNA molecule divided into sections called genes. Chromosomes include genes which are divided into sections called DNA molecules. Which two statements are correct? Now the answer to that was, which two statements are correct? 3 and 4. Why was it 3 and 4? Why is 1, 2 and 5 wrong? 46 pairs of chromosomes in body cells. No, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in each body cell. In gametes, chromosomes are found in pairs. Wrong. Males have one X and one Y chromosome in each body cell. That's fine. 4 chromosomes contain a long DNA divided into sections called genes. That's fine. That's correct. Chromosomes include genes which are divided into sections called DNA. No, that's wrong. Chromosomes are made up of DNA, and then there are sections of DNA which is called portion of a DNA which is called a gene. So which two statements are correct? That was 3 and 4. Either you knew your inheritance chapter very well, only then you could have done this question. Otherwise, this was a little challenging. Then question 38, elephants are hunted by poachers for their tusks, which are source of ivory. In 1930, in a national park, 1% of the elephants were born without any tusks. Lack of tusks was the result of a gene mutation. Currently, in the same area, 15% of the females and 9% of the males do not have tusks. Which statement explains the increase in the number of tuskless elephants? Selection against tusked elephants occurring. Tuskless elephants are less likely to be killed by poachers. Tuskless elephants reproduce and pass the allele to their offspring. So it was 1, 2, and 3. Then coming on to the 39th question, which is again on a pedigree chart, which is of course the most daunting question for you all, and that's what we are doing this video on. The diagram shows a family tree in which hereditary night blindness occurs. Now, this is a male with normal eyesight and the male with night blindness, and then the female with night blindness. Let's give it another color. So the night blindness one has been shaded for you, right? Now, how do you pick up, how do you do this question? The question that you have to do is you have to realize is what is the trait which is dominant and what is the trait which is recessive. You see, what you have to understand is how do you figure that out? Now, you figure that out from 5 and 6. 5 and 6 are normal. 8 has got the disease, which is night blindness. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you night blindness is a recessive trait. How does it tell you that? You see, parents who don't have the disease are dominant. So these parents have this trait. Now, how can they have a child with night blindness? That is the only possibility if both the parents are heterozygous. So first, from the question, you've got to figure out what is the recessive trait. Now, if we say recessive trait was night blindness, then that meant is that if night blindness was the recessive trait, then all the children will be night blindness, suffering from night blindness. But if we have parents who do not have the trait, and then they have a child born with some disease, then we know that the dominant trait is the thing which is without the disease. It could be the other way around as well. So this is how we figured out. This is how I would have done this question if I was in your place taking the exam tomorrow. So night blindness is the recessive characteristic. So then you know 5 and 6 are this. Now it says, what is the chance that unborn child 9 will be a male with night blindness? So you see parents who have having a chance of this, you see this is the normal thing is AA, and AA. So there is a 25% chance of having a child with night blindness. But then how many chances is that of having a male child? That is 50%. So 50% of 25% is 12.5. That is 1 in 8. That is 1 in 8. So having a chance, or you can say, you can say it in another way. There's a 1 over 4 chance of having a child with night blindness. So this is 25% is 1 over 4. And then there is a 50% chance of having one half having a male child. So 1 over 4 and 1 over 2 is 1 over 8. So this is a 1 in 8 chance of having a male with night blindness. If it had just asked for night blindness, then we would have said 1 over 1 in 4. But it is saying a male with night blindness, or if it had said a female with night blindness, then it would have been 1 in 8. Then another question, which statement about dominant and recessive alleles is not correct? The phenotype of a homozygous is always dominant. No, homozygous can be this. Homozygous can be this. If this is this, then it's got the dominant phenotype. But if it is this, which is also homozygous, then this is the recessive phenotype. Whatever the recessive trait is, white flowers or night blindness or something like that. Now let's look at question 37. A gene is a unit of inheritance that controls the production of a protein. Now instead of a protein, they could have given you a name of a protein like hemoglobin, like pepsin, like insulin. Please remember, all hormones are not proteins. There are some hormones which are sex hormones. They are made up of steroids, estrogen, progesterone. So all hormones are not proteins. Even that could be an MCQ. So is a unit of inheritance that controls the production of hormones? No, that would be wrong because all hormones are not proteins. All enzymes are proteins. Yes. Then coming to the next question. Question number 38. The gene for insulin production can be removed from human pancreatic cells and added to genetic material of a harmless bacterium. What would be the next stage of using this process to treat diabetes? Put the bacteria into fermenter to multiply rapidly because this bacteria now is going to produce insulin for us. So we need millions and millions of copies of this bacteria so that we can make a lot of insulin. So that is why the answer was C. The others are all wrong. Add the altered bacterium to human food. No, we would not do that because everybody is not a diabetic. Inject the bacterium into the blood. Well, then it will just, the person will die because too much insulin will be produced because the bacteria will keep on producing insulin. And use the altered bacterium in a nasal spray. Well, you can't take the bacteria will produce uh, tons of insulin. The person will die in seconds. Okay, now pedigree chart. Let's come here now to this difficult pedigree chart. Earlobes can either be attached to the cheek or free unattached. So, okay, but fine, forget it. So there are two types of earlobes, attached and unattached. That's all what you have to read in question. This characteristic is controlled by a single gene. The alleles for attached earlobes is recessive. So attached is recessive. So let's look at all the attached ones. Now the first thing you do is all the attached ones, which are the clear ones, you write this. So person 6 is homozygous recessive. The persons who are, I've shaded all of these people. 9 is homozygous recessive. This, there's no number to it. This is homozygous recessive. And this is, now how did I figure this out? I told you. Attached earlobe. So look at the key. Attached earlobes is this one with a clear circle and the clear square. So then I colored it all. I made them all purple and I've written on that small a, small a. This is the first rule that you do. You find out what is the recessive trait and then you can just write two letters. You can write small a, small a. You can write small b, small b. You can write any small letters. I'm not saying that you have to only write a. Now it says the diagram shows the inheritance of earlobe attachment in one family. Which two individuals must be heterozygous for earlobe attachment? Now, how do you go about doing this question? You've got to figure this out. Is the free earlobe people, the people with free earlobes are either this or this. We don't know. Now, you've got to go back from the answer. You've got to understand is that parent 1 and 2 have a child who is small a, small a. So the parents have to be big A, small a, big A, small a. So these parents have to be big A, small a. Why? Because they have a child who is small a, small a. 1 and 2 के दो बच्चे हैं. They have got two kids, 5 and 6. 6 is small a, small a. So one A has to come from one parent and this other A has to come from this parent. Only then this child is their child. Or he's not their child. That is, of course, they've showed you a pedigree attachment, so they're showing it that is their children. They're not adopted. Then how do you figure out? Now you know 6 is small a, small a. So what has 7 got to be? Because they've got 9. The kid 9 is small a, small a. So if there is one small a coming from here, then the other small a has to come from here. So 7 is definitely big A, small a. And 1 is definitely big A, small a. You see, there are no 2's here. You can see here, there's no 2 mentioned here anywhere. So we know 2 is also big A, small a. So which individuals must be heterozygous? Because 1 and 2 have to be heterozygous for earlobe attachment because they have a child. Child 6 is their child. So he is small a, small a. So then it has to come from both the parents. So 1 and 7. 1 was big A, small a, and 7 was big A, small a. Why? Because child 9 is the child of 6 and 7. 6 is the father and 7 is the mother, and they have 3 children, and 3 of them have the recessive trait. So pedigree charts have to be sort of, you have to first find out what is the recessive trait, and then you write that, and then you go back, and then you go from the parents. If the parent have the dominant, then they have to be heterozygous, because those parents who are heterozygous can only have a child who is homozygous recessive. That is the only way. You can't have it like this. This couple cannot have a child this. Where does this one small a come from? So pedigree charts have to be done with this thought in mind. And I hope this is helping you all. Then coming to another question, the table shows the genotypes and phenotypes of hair color for the members of a family, but one phenotype is shown incorrectly. Now you come to a very simple, this thing is that you look at it and you say, okay, well, small a is blonde. So the other color has to be, so brown has to be what? Brown has to be either big A or big A small a. So this is fine. This is also fine. Blonde sun 1. Now here we come to the mistake one, because we looked at the question and we found out that blonde is small a small a. Now this is blonde is big A small a. So this is wrong. Then browns, I told you, had to be big A, and so this is brown is correct, and big A small a brown is correct. So that is why the answer was sun 1. Now when you look at this question number 39, again a pedigree chart. The diagram shows a family in which some members suffer from a disease caused by a recessive allele. So the people who have the disease are the recessive allele. So male with the disease or female with the disease, that doesn't matter. So let's write that first. So 1 is the diseased one, 3 is the diseased one, and 6 is the diseased one. Rule 1, recessive trait, write down the recessive traits. Now we know 1, 3, and 6 have the disease, because that's what's given here in the key, male with the disease and female with the disease. Which are the two members of the family who must be heterozygous for the gene? So heterozygous means what? So this means 2 doesn't have the disease. So 2 doesn't have the disease. What is 2 got to be? 2 has got to be this or this, right? So who have to be heterozygous? You've got to understand why. Because 1 and 2 have 2 children, 4 and 5. Then 4 gets married to 3. And then 4 and 3 have a child, have 2 children, 6 and 7. So that means if the child 6, so that means what is 4? 4 has to be big A small a. Why big A small a? Because one A's come from here and one A's come from here. So if 4 is heterozygous, but you see here the 4 option had 1. 1 was wrong. 1 can't be heterozygous. There are no other 4 options. So then who else was heterozygous? Then if 4 is big A small a, where did the big A come from and the small a come from? So that means what are we seeing now? We are seeing now 4 and 5 are the children of 1 and 2. Now you have to understand, what is 5 got to be? 5 has to have a small a. Why has it got to have a small a? Because the father is small a small a. So this is the father. So one small a has to come from here, but he doesn't have the disease. So he has to be big A small a. And I told you that the male without the disease or the female without the disease, these people have to be either big A, or big A, small a. So 5 definitely has to be heterozygous, because she gets this A from the dad, and a big A, because the 5 doesn't have the disease. So 5 has to be big A, small a, or big A, but it can't be big A, because the father has small a, small a. So the answer was 5 and 7. Why 5 and 7? Because 7 also has to be big A small a. Why? Because the mother 3 is small a small a. 4 doesn't have the disease. So the ones who don't have the disease can either be this or they can be this. So you have to be very careful how you answer this question and how you handle this question. This is a difficult question, but you've got to figure it out in your own little way. Is first you write down the recessive traits. Then for the dominant people, you know these are the two possibilities. They can be either big A or big A small a. Now, why would they be big A small a? Because if one parent has the recessive trait. Okay, I'm going to explain this again in another manner, the same question. So, first of all, what you have got to understand is that they told you in the characteristic that the disease caused by is a recessive allele. So, people with this are this. Who are the people who don't have the disease? They are this or this. So, now let's look at the people who have the disease. So, this person has the disease, 3 has the disease, 1 has the disease, and 6 has the disease. So, then if 6 has the disease, who are his parents? 3. So 1A comes from 3 and 1A comes from 4, the parent, the father. But he doesn't have the disease, so he has got to be this. Because as I told you, without the disease, the people have got to be this. Then we have to understand is that they don't have so the people 4 and 5, they don't have the disease, so they can't be this. Why can't they be this? Because they've got a small a coming from 1. So person 5 also has to be big A, small a. So the people without the disease, that is 2, are either going to be big A or big A small a, and 7 also has to be big A or big A small a. And 7 has to be big A small a. Why? Because there's small a coming from here. So it has to be a big A coming from 4, the dad. So you have to figure out is that the person, what is the recessive trait? The recessive trait was with the disease. So there definitely there's only one genotype. But the people without who have the dominant trait can either be homozygous dominant or heterozygous. Now you have to write this on the question to be able to figure this out. You must do this rough work on the question paper and then look at the answer and go through it. Take your time. This is the question which is going to take most of your time. So please do it very carefully and get this right. Thank you very much, and this ends this video on pedigree charts, and wish you all the very best for tomorrow.